you've mentioned Xi multiple times. I'm not sure if you saw the breaking news that Biden is planning on meeting him in San Francisco in the coming weeks. Obviously, this is the most consequential relationship in the world. You've talked about what's going on with China. You've talked about clarity, right? Sort of the premise of that meeting is they don't want any surprises. They want to have reestablished military connections or communications. They want to address climate change. They want to address open borders and drugs and fentanyl that's coming across, drug trafficking, South China Sea. What do you envision? What do you see happening with Biden and Xi next week or when it happens?
I think Xi Jinping will be running circles around Joe Biden. I think it's a capability issue at the top right now in the United States of America. I mean, the climate change agenda is part of what China uses to laugh at and trample and stomp all over the face of the United States of America. I mean, there's a word in Mandarin. It's called baizuo. You know what it means? Refers to progressive white people in the United States. Doesn't apply to me. Some of you guys. But it's like a derisive term.
How do you say it?
It's Baizuo if you're looking it up.
Okay.
And so I'm not fluent in Mandarin, but it'd be something like baizuo, something like that. And so there it is. Yeah, actually, yeah.
White left.
It's a derogatory Chinese neologism.
Western leftism.
Western.
Okay.
I think it's actually very specific to white in particular.
Adam, you're such a baizu.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I don't think so. No, they're referring to the kind of people who support Biden, actually.
Yeah.
So, and to some extent, Biden falls into this category. So, the climate change agenda, the idea of throwing climate change in that, this is the useful idiot.
Yeah.
It
There
turned
he
useful
is
idiot.
in Russia.
Right, because
Right there,
it's the
entomology.
modern version of the useful idiot.
Idiotic liberals, right there, second line.
Yes.
So it is. It's the communist useful idiot
Yes,
from the 1950s.
exactly. So that when I hear climate change on that agenda, that's useless for the United States because that's just a way for China to run laps around us while we're flogging ourselves. And, I think that's kind of what they've done on some of these issues of race and human rights. I mean, a couple of years ago, what was Xi Jinping saying? Black Lives Matter shows the United States is no better when he's questioned about putting 1 million religious minorities, Uyghurs, in concentration camps and subjecting them to forced sterilization and communist indoctrination and worse. So I think that because of that self-hatred that exists in the United States today, particularly on the left, China understands the useful idiot, the baizuo, to be able to exploit that psychological insecurity back against us. And because Biden is so obsessed with self-flogging the United States for our modern way of life and our sins of systemic racism and everything else dating back to the apologist agenda that the modern progressive left embraces, that puts China at a competitive advantage in any discussion that looks like the one they're about to have. My discussion with Xi Jinping will be different.
Yeah. I want to know what that would look like, yeah.
You unleashed hell on the world with the COVID-19 pandemic. We know it was a lab leak. You lied about it. The only question is, was it intentional? Mm-hmm. If you don't tell me now and we find out separately, there's going to be even bigger consequences than there are already going to be. We know it was intentional because, well, here's what it's going to be. Financial consequences of the highest order, using every financial lever we have available. If we don't hold you accountable for that, then we know we can expect worse in the future, and I'm not going to expect worse in the future. Financial consequences using every lever available up to and including the national debt held by China. We will extract our appropriately due reparation for the COVID-19 pandemic. Oh, and by the way, you're not playing by the same set of rules. We're going to be kicking you out of the WTO and any sort of relation from a trade perspective with the U.S. unless you're playing by the same set of rules. No IP theft, no data theft, no forced technology transfers from American companies, no turning our companies into lobbying pawns. None of that until we're playing by the same set of rules, or else we're done. And by the time I show up at that meeting, I'm going to have done my homework. We're already onshoring to the United States, and we've already bolstered relationships with Japan, South Korea, India, Australia, and otherwise, such that he knows when I'm sitting across the table from him, I'm not BSing him, right? We have a stronger hand than he does. That's worse for him than it is for us.
He knows
so then
that.
he has to fold, and he knows that. But he has to know that when he shows up, which means you got to do your homework before you show up at that meeting. The other thing I will say is, don't you touch and come within spitting distance of the idea of annexing Taiwan anytime in the foreseeable future, because we will defend, at least until we have semiconductor independence in this country, because you will not hold an economic gun to our head. I know that's the wet dream that China has. No, we're not going to let you do that. It's not going to happen on my watch. And then after we have semiconductor independence, we'll resume our current position of strategic ambiguity and see what that looks like in the future.
You know, this is what's scary about this election, that no one is paying attention to it. Because, and what you left out, I know you didn't leave it out, you just didn't list it there, which is also tie your damn currency to trade and float with the international currency markets, right? Because they
China's manipulator number one in every different direction, but it's not just the currencies. It's manipulation of data transfers. It's manipulation of every set of rules.
You're correct on every point. I was just adding currency to that. I think that if China senses that there is a conservative victory with someone who's going to sit at the table and put those cards down, they will move on China before November 1st of next. Move on Taiwan before November 1st of next year, because they have to. They need that, because everything you're talking about here says, okay, first of all, I'm stopping your repayments. Now I'm stopping on trillions of T-bills. I'm doing this and this and this. They are tightened up so many ways. You're so correct. They have to move on Taiwan before the election if someone like you is leading in those polls.
You know, it's a funny story. I haven't shared this before. There was a former leader of another nation, former head of state, as an event. He approached me afterwards. He said, you know, they're not happy that an Indian American, and particularly you, is running for U.S. president. I said, oh, you know that from having known them. He's like, no, I know that from knowing it now. I said, okay, well, it's interesting to know. You know, China's, you know, I don't think our adversaries are going to like it very much if you have somebody who's in office that can't be exploited in the way that Biden is. However, I will give the world, our allies and adversaries and our own citizens, the same message. That's what makes it credible. Our sole obligation is to protect U.S. citizens here at home. So it's interesting how much more credible your message is. Your allies can take it more seriously. Your adversaries can take your red lines more seriously. Our citizens can take it more seriously if you're actually saying the same thing to everybody. My sole obligation as the U.S. president, my moral obligation, is to the Americans here at home. And everything that I'm going to draw as a hard red line tracks that, and that's how you know I'm going to keep it. And so they will take it more seriously. And I don't think world war is in China's interest, and I don't think world war is in America's interest, and I don't think it's in Russia's interest, and I don't think it's in any nation's interest. And so the way we avoid it is by having those clear red lines, clear answers about what we will and won't do. Don't drive our adversaries in different ways into alliances with one another. Get Russia out of China's hands. Be very clear with our own people that war is never a preference for us. It's only ever going to be a necessity. That avoiding World War III is a vital objective. And then we protect our own homeland enough to say, God forbid there's a major conflict in the future, we know that we're not as vulnerable as we are today. Those are the basic next steps when it comes to foreign policy of the next U.S. president. And then reducing that economic dependence on China is an easy win that we can deliver along the way.
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.